Deltarune Chapter 5 is out and I loved it. The new characters are fun, the new platforming sections are amazing as a Celeste fan, Asgore and Ralsei gain back all the aura they had lost, Omega IC is dead. Do you think the library bird killed him?
Is that hug you want?
Friend inside me is also dead. Only in the literal sense though. Chapter 5 overall isn't groundbreaking in terms of lore, so on that front I'm a bit disappointed, but the gameplay is the best out of all the chapters and it's not even close. Easily my second favorite chapter, right below chapter 4. Now though, all I have described is part of the normal route of the game, but the weird route for this chapter is radically different and only around half an hour long if you read all the dialogue, and yet it's probably the most important thing lore-wise to come out of chapter 5. While it gives a lot of insight on Noelle as a character, it also by extension confirms some of the assumptions that I already had of Kris, which I discussed in my IC video, and mixed with some of the info that we gather from Asgore in the normal route, it may even explain whatever the hell happened to Des all these years ago, and it seems like it's quite different from the usual shelter friend kidnapping stuff we assumed all this time. This goes without saying, but we are about to enter major spoiler territory for chapter 5, so be prepared. Before talking about this, I want to give my interpretation of chapter 5's weird route, as again it's gonna provide some strong context on what happened to her. I'm gonna assume you already know what happens in the weird route: late festival exploration with Susie, Sense gives spread, Noelle goes insane, she clips out of bounds with Kris, and the sequence break in real life. All classic weird out stuff. For me though, the most interesting part aren't the game-breaking glitches that are being pulled off, but what Noelle says before revealing she has gone complete cuckoo. Since Tess left, all I've been doing has just been marching down my path, staying quiet, getting good grades. It feels like I've just been watching myself through glass, watching someone else move me through my life. Of course, this can be interpreted as her now being self-aware of being an LBC, plus it being apparelled with Kris' relationship with us, the soul, the player. Although, if we look at it from a more psychological standpoint, this is just dissociation. This is quite interesting because I have had the exact same assumption about Kris in my IC video, how they started dissociating after Des' disappearance and how that could lead to them enacting their more sadistic, intrusive thoughts which they try to suppress, and how it's especially apparent in the weird route. And now there's Noelle saying exactly that, so I guess the same can be applied to Kris as I originally thought. Interestingly enough, during the weird route they seem to try and avoid such thing at all costs, starting from chapter 4. And in chapter 5, they do everything in their power to not get out of bed, but fail, as the soul seems to have gotten so strong to come out of the cell by itself, unless Kris just put that on because they were becoming green, and possibly also have stronger control over Kris. At this point they start being so distant from all of this that you can't even read the narrator text when interacting with stuff. There's nothing they can do anymore to make it hurt any less for the people around them, so the best thing they can do is make it hurt less for themselves. The last thing also seemingly applies to Noelle for the entirety of the weird route, up until chapter 5 where she instead fully embraces her newfound strength. I have mentioned that the weird route may make Kris more open to their sadistic, intrusive thoughts, which is something Hiram hints at. Plus, that's basically what love or level of violence is in Undertale according to Sense. And there's a high chance Sense is gonna follow Kris and Noelle across the lake to the breadcrumbs from the bread he gave. So Sense and Hiram may both have a major role in the weird route in the coming chapter 7 side B. Anyways, this means that Noelle embracing her newfound strength may be interpreted as her fully embracing her intrusive thoughts. I'm going to give a content warning now for heavy mental health topics, mainly self-harm and suicide. I'm gonna talk about them for the rest of the video, and yes, even once I start talking about this, so click off if you feel the need to, alright? Okay, let's continue then. The reason why I believe the weird route to some extent is Kris and Noelle enacting their intrusive thoughts is mostly because I feel like all dialogue options and choices are actually a byproduct of Kris' actual thoughts, excluding stuff like proceed, equip, etc., which seem to come directly from us, the soul, if they're all coming out of Kris' chest wasn't a clear indicator already. Also, I guess the great to see you again when talking with Sense is also us, I don't know. Such invasive thoughts can be seen in the normal route, for example, with the option of never playing the piano again, which Kris really doesn't like, and hurts themselves to prevent it, but it wouldn't be an option if Kris never thought of that in the first place. Self-harm in general seems to be the way Kris punishes themselves for having such thoughts, while also being one of their coping mechanisms, and the main way they take control back from the soul, and in a way stop the dissociation. All common reasons why some people in real life choose to self-harm, but I already talked a lot about all of this in my previous theory video. What I actually want to talk about now is what are Noelle's intrusive thoughts instead? In the normal route, Noelle says this to Susie. Can I say something weird? For a long time I've actually been thinking about what would happen if I left. Susie adds, you mean, like, ran away from home? Noelle responds, I guess, but I'm too weak to do that. I originally interpreted this as her being suicidal, and I did make a Twitter post about it. Now, I don't really believe Noelle is actually suicidal now, but that she does have some suicidal thoughts, which she tries to bottle up, just like Kris does with her own intrusive thoughts. I feel like this will be a much better parallel. In my original Twitter post, I have seen some people saying that it may just mean that she wants to actually run away from home and nothing else. And while that's also true, considering that she actually ends up doing that in the wild route by trying to get to the lake, I heavily disagree with the thought that she only meant that. To explain what I mean, we gotta read a bit through the lines. First of all, Noelle doesn't originally say running away from home, that's what Susie says. Noelle originally says, what would happen if I left? Notice the ... before if I left. She put a lot of thought into what word she wanted to use, and I feel like she means it in the same way as how Des left, more on that later. The other major times Noelle talks about going away are both in chapter 2. When talking about the cyber city to Kris, she says, Des always told me she'd take me somewhere like this, somewhere with shining lights. The other time is in the Ferris wheel, where her and Susie say, if you could do something crazy right now, what would you do? Well, I'd jump out the window. Huh? It's a dream, right? I'd grow big angel wings and fly as far as I can, gazing back at it all, the skyline shining like holiday lights. This line, other than referencing the shining lights she was talking about earlier, also directly parallels what Noelle says in the wild route. Why don't we do something crazy? Tell me to grow wings, and let's fly out of this stupid town, to somewhere no one has ever been before, the other side of the lake. So, Des wanted to go somewhere with shining lights, the other side of the lake, directly parallels the place. Des is implied to be dead, Noelle wants to grow wings by jumping out the window. The parallels couldn't be more obvious than that. Plus, they both end up basically drowning in the lake at the end, so even if that wasn't the intent, they still ended up kind of killing themselves anyways. Now, how does all of that link back to Des's disappearance? Well, I believe the weird route serves as a parallel for what happened to her. Let me explain. The smoking gun for this assumption is the Asgore cutscene at the end of chapter 5, where he talks about that day. During the cutscene, there's a flash of red, and a sound that's the same sound effect of when he put the thorn ring on Noelle in chapter 4. The flash of red seems to directly parallel the flash of red that happens after the thank you message, which is probably the exact moment Noelle goes insane. This doesn't necessarily mean that someone put a thorn ring on Des, but it still serves as a clear connection between the disappearance and the wild route. There are also some more details from Asgore that may make it seem that it isn't a simple friend kidnapping. The incident has to do with the creation of a dark world, presumably made by the same person who made the cyberworld, the place with holiday lights, that Des wanted to go to with Noelle, which seems to be the same place from the bottom of the lake. Des's disappearance wasn't a kidnapping. It was a suicide. I have heard that something similar happens in Omori, which most people seem to believe to be the very similar game Toby was talking about in a random Twitter post, but I barely know anything about Omori, so I'm not gonna talk further about this connection. But if someone is more knowledgeable on the matter, please let me know in the comments. Now, Asgore's details are a bit muddy, so I'm not really sure about this. Plus, there's the whole thing with the children followed the pointed tail that wouldn't mix well. Although, if it was a friend kidnapping, then how was a dark world created by the night, and why was a black shard left in the crime scene? In general, the timeline doesn't really make sense for both interpretations as of now, with the new info we have, so I feel like they are both just as likely. For now, let's focus on the assumption that it was indeed a suicide, but the explanation for what precisely happened is gonna go in more of a speculation territory. where did the other spoilers go? If we wanna follow the Weird Out parallels one-on-one, we could assume that it was an assisted suicide. Either Kris or Hazel assisted Des while she did whatever she did in the place of the accident, which I assume is the shelter. I mean, it's the only dark world which seems to have been there for a long time. Maybe she stabbed herself and accidentally made a dark world inside her, and the high concentration of darkness coming out of her may have turned her body into that melting mess that is the night. Or maybe Des drowned in the lake and the dark world in the shelter is a separate accident, which could still be linked to the bottom of the lake. If you have seen both Toilet Theory and Roots Theory, you may already know where I'm going with this. According to Toilet Theory, the lake may be linked to the shelter, the depths, being some sort of sewage system that is then let off in the lake. And according to Roots Theory, the place with the black deer who mimics Kris' movements, which most people believe to be Des/the night, matches with the lake area. So there's a high chance that if she did drown and ended up at the bottom of the lake, similar to Kris and Noelle, she may have ended up in the depths that way, or the shelter, or the northern light/ice palace, or both, I don't know. I mean, that one light coming from the bottom of Noelle's sprite right at the end, if the right of the screen is the west, as that's where the sun sets, then the bottom of the screen is the north. That's a northern light hitting Noelle, the same one from the Ice Palace, and to reach the Ice Palace you need to cross a lake. Same thing goes for the Roots area, which you go there through a sewage system in the city board, which heavily resembles Cyber City, the place that reminds Noelle of that somewhere with shining lights. Both areas come from the Sword route, so I guess we are gonna go in both areas anyways through the bottom of the lake. Maybe after the bottom of the lake we reach the Ice Palace, and from the Ice Palace we find the entrance for the sewage system connected to the bottom of the lake, which then leads to the shelter, the Roots. That's basically all I wanted to say, but there's one last thing I want to address. I've seen a popular theory going around that Kris and Noelle from the Weird Route are the night. Now, I will say that it would kinda suck from a narrative and timeline standpoint, but there is just so much evidence in favor of it that I cannot ignore, so I wanna give my own 2 cents. In Deltarune's code, there is a check for whether or not you have completed Chapter 5's Weird Route and reached the Side B screen, which seems to mark the entire game forever, not just that specific save. I don't know about you, but it kind of reminds me of Undertale and how it permanently marks your game if you complete a genocide playthrough. Now, what if, hear me out, the Knight's identity gets permanently replaced by Kris and Noelle if you reach the Side B screen at least once? Kinda like how Kara replaces Frisk at the end of the Undertale Pacifist route. Normally the Knight's actual identity could actually be, I don't know, Des plus the vessel. So in a way, it's like you're saving Des from her fate, but ultimately taking her place. A monster plus a human, just like Kris and Noelle. Just like what was required to cross the barrier in Undertale, which is what Azrael plus Kara did, ultimately causing the monster's death. You get what I mean, right? No, I don't think the other side of the lake leads to Undertale. That would be dumb, although that would be an explanation for how Sense ends up there if he ends up following Kris's breadcrumbs. But I do think it's meant to be a parallel to Undertale's barrier nonetheless. I already did theorize in my Black Balls theory that breaking a bottom barrier to start the roaring and potentially find Des's body was the Knight's ultimate goal, but I didn't know at the time what that barrier will be, the barrier that separates hometown from where the hell Des is located, and it looks like we might have found it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about. I really want to hear what you think of all this in the comments. This is a very early stage theory as Chapter 5 just came out, so there's a high chance a lot of such assumptions may be outdated in my mind by the time Chapter 6 is about to come out, or that they just straight up suck. But man, I really wanted to take these thoughts all out of my chest. I have a lot more to discuss, but separately I don't think they could make for a neat theory video, so I am debating whether or not I should just make a discussion video where I just ramble about this chapter in particular, just giving my thoughts on everything. We'll see. Anyways, there's one thought I want to express. Still from my Black Balls theory, I say that I believe the striped bird from the library is one of the Knight's victims, and how he got lobotomized. Well, It looks like I was dead wrong. This guy ain't lobotomized. He is the lobotomizer.